Hey, welcome to the Ninjababes podcast. I'm Cara Mack, and I'm here with Isabella Wakeham, and I am pumped to get this episode started. Isabella has been on ANW 13 this season, as many of you know, because you've already seen her. She also has a past in ANW Jr. and has been a part of the ninja community for a while. So I'm really excited, Isabella, for the world to get to know you better. Seeing you compete and seeing just who you are as a person, you seem super inspiring, just a kind soul that we all want to get to know. So I'm happy to have you on today, and I'm really excited to have you. So thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Cara. I am really excited to get to talk with you and to get to know you more too, and just kind of share about my journey on the show and just through Ninja Warrior as kind of a sport. So I'm excited for today.
Yes, let's get into it. So can you just tell us like some facts? So how old are you, and when did you first start getting involved with ninja?
Yeah, so I'm 17. I started ninja about 7 years ago, so when I was like 10-ish. It's kind of been a whole family sport for me. So my younger siblings do it, and my older brother Isaiah. So he was on the show with me this year, which was really, really cool to get to do that with him because we've been doing it together for so long. I competed on American Ninja Warrior Jr. for season 1. I was 14 then, so for season 2, I was too old, but I got to test and meet a bunch of people, so that was really exciting. And then I was supposed to be old enough to compete on like season 15 of the show, but season 13, they made that rule change and got to compete. So
yeah, here you are. Yeah. What did it feel like when you got the call? Because were you expecting it, or like how did that come about?
Yeah, so some people don't know this, but we actually, like 20 of us teenagers got the call for season 12. So we were supposed to compete, and this was in February, right before COVID hit. So we were supposed to compete season 12, and then the whole season got postponed. After that happened, they kind of told us, like, we don't know if you'll be able to compete, but, stay fit, keep training, we'll see what happens. And then calls started going out for the postponed season, and then finally they let us know that they couldn't have us on. It's already kind of a stretch to get us on, and with all of the regulations for COVID, and that we'd have to travel with a guardian, just kind of made it impossible, which we all understand, but was pretty disappointing. And so we didn't know if it was kind of we'll never get to compete as kids, or maybe it'll roll over to season 13. And so when they asked us to apply for season 13, it was like, oh man, like this is gonna happen, like it might actually happen. And so when we finally got the call for season 13, I think all of us teams were like, like relief and like, okay, like it's gonna happen, like it's looking like it's gonna happen. They've figured everything out with COVID, and we're gonna get to go.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It's like a wild experience, and to have like that high in season 12 of like, oh my gosh, they asked me, and then to not know if it's really gonna happen, and then being pushed back, I can imagine like what a roller coaster that felt like. And then even for some people, it, like, in hindsight, you got to train all those months more and be more prepared, and even just like thinking about the concept of like, well, maybe I really will get called, so I need to be ready. Like, I think that's quite an advantage to have that time and like that brain space to like get ready.
Yeah, I mean, so we were pretty in hardcore lockdown, so we couldn't go to our gym. And so my brother and my neighbor and I went to our like park near our house, and there was this like patch of concrete near the park, and we would just work out there like every day for like hours because we didn't know if we'd be called or not.
Right.
So just like EMOM workouts, just like HIIT workouts, trying to get as much ninja training as we could without being on obstacles.
Right.
And then my brother Isaiah ended up competing on season 12, and so it was good for him to like feel prepared for that.
Okay, so how much older is your brother? I didn't realize. I totally forgot that he was in season 12.
Yeah, they didn't show him. His run wasn't.
Okay.
We wanted it to, but so he was 19 last season, so he's 20 now, so he's 3 years older than me.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it was super fun during the episode for qualifying this season to see your interaction with your brother, and like the best friend aspect. Like it was cute, but it was also like, that's awesome. Like, I have 2 older brothers, and we get along. We hang out and we do stuff, but like the bond that you guys seem to have is like really special.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, and I was really happy because, sometimes the show will do like sob stories or like, kind of push something that's not truly true. And like, there are aspects of it and most of it's true, but they're kind of like pushing a certain side of it. But I was super happy to get to show like how Isaiah and I really are. And I thought it was funny, like, they kept showing our, like, fails at our house. Like, we were trying these moves, and, like, we kept failing it, and those are the ones that they showed. But that's, like, real life, like, we fail a lot, and we just all, like, laugh. Like, my mom was laughing so hard at us. And so that's kind of how it is, and so I was really happy that they captured, like, a genuine aspect of our friendship.
yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were wondering, like, do they really like each other that much? Like, I don't know.
Okay, not all the time. We will have arguments, and my mom's probably saying, don't say that, but like the bestest of friends are gonna have those arguments and gonna have those days.
I just remember growing up with my brothers, it was always like the race to like shotgun in the car, and like just like the little things that we would like compete over, but we definitely never did ninja together. I didn't start ninja till I was like 26, so yeah, it's totally different, but I appreciate like that sibling love. It's so good. So yeah. So when you fast forward, okay, so then once you did get the call for season 13, how did it feel to be among some of the teens who were getting the call?
Yeah, so getting to do the show with these other teens was like really, really cool because there's, every season is gonna have rookies, but like I think if I'd been the only teen, it just would have been like I really need to prove something, kind of. Knowing that I was coming in with this like super strong group, I was like, they're gonna see, even if I mess up, like I am representing these teenagers and I'm proud of it. But it's kind of not like all pressure on me, which was nice. Like going in with so many of my friends, like even just on my qualifying night, getting to compete with like Christian Yost and like Sophie Shaft and Elijah, like those are all like some of my best friends. And so getting to do that with them, and like it made it a more like calming atmosphere because it felt more normal, but at the same time like we were all freaking out because we were so excited because we'd never done this before. So it was like calming in the sense of nerves for me, but then exciting, like the experience was exciting.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too, like, for some people know this, some people don't. In the Tacoma Dome, there was no audience. And so for me, coming back as like a veteran, if you want to say competitor, third year at ANW, it was like, wow, it's empty. But I really liked it. I felt like it was so easy to just focus on what I was doing, and it felt more chill. The one weird thing was they do have like the audience like cheering, like the recording playing, and I was like, at one point I was like, I don't think my friends and family are being that loud on the sideline screens, and then I kind of like realized like mid obstacles that that's what was happening. It was kind of funny, but I liked that aspect. And I know for you so you've been on ANW Jr, right? Did you feel when you were preparing like for the show, were you trying to relate a lot of your experience back to ANW Jr to like get ready, or were you just kind of like, this is a totally new experience? Like, how did that feel for you?
Yeah, so like you were saying with the crowds, for junior we had a ton of crowds, but it was really different because there were two people, so it's not as much all eyes on me. It's kind of like all eyes on the race, kind of.
That's true.
And so I loved that there were no crowds for Tacoma. It felt like a soft intro to lights, camera, action, because you have your sidelines, and those are your people who, like, in a local comp would be there, like, running track for you or videoing for you. And so I, like, looked over and I saw them, and I was like, okay. And then, like, production side, like, there's always going to be other people in the room watching. So that's kind of what that felt like. But having no, like, giant crowd was like, okay, like, this is a competition. I do well in competitions. This isn't like, I don't need to do anything crazy. Like, this is chill. But for junior, a lot of, there are some similarities and some big differences. So like with the crowd, it was pretty different. But it's still, I kind of like went back on how I felt about interviews and like B-roll and stuff like that. And so I kind of knew what to expect for that side of it, because for junior, that was really nerve-wracking for me. I did not love it. And I think the biggest change for me was kind of how I like perceived like the people interviewing me, I guess. For
Okay.
junior, I was kind of in this mindset of don't mess up. If you mess up, they can air it on national television.
No pressure.
No pressure, right? So that was really scary, and I was like, okay, like I would just be like, ooh, like, okay, calm down, Isabel, like say something right, say something good, say something smart, don't say anything dumb. But for ANW, I somehow flipped my mindset. I'm still figuring out how I did that, but it was good. But I started thinking like they're here to listen to me, and I get to tell them my story, and I feel like I have a cool story, so I just want to get to share that. So every time I went into the interview room and they'd ask me the questions, I was like, okay, like here's my chance to tell the world how I feel, and it just made it like way more calming, and kind of knowing that the show wants to make you look good, and they're not like if you fumble on a word, like they're probably not going to show that, right? Like you get do-overs and you know, try and get it right the first time, but just being there and like I got to know some of my interviews a little bit better than for junior, because like we did hometowns and all of that, and so by the end it was like, oh, like here's some of my friends and they're just asking me about.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You said a couple things I wanted to touch on. How old were you during the filming for junior?
I was 14. So I was
Okay.
14 then, and I'm 17 now.
So, yeah, so 3 years. So 3 years older, 3 years more of like a, perspective of how to look at things. So it makes a lot of sense. Just, I'm glad that you were able to look back and think about like how that experience was, and then think about how to apply that to the new experience of interviewing, because I think that's such a great way to look at it. It's just like, these are people who are on my side. They want to hear my story, and I'm just going to tell it. It is a little weird sometimes when they ask you to like, can you say that again or use a different word or whatever. It can feel a little like less natural, but at the same time, it's like if you could just focus on, oh, it's gonna help me explain this better if I say it this way or whatever. It can be like really calm the situation. So I think that's good. And I can totally relate to what you said about like the soft opening or whatever you refer to with like the like starting ANW with no audience. Like I forget exactly how you phrased it, but I was like, yes, that's exactly it. It's like, let me ease you in and then you'll feel more comfortable. I felt the same way, because compared to other seasons when there is a huge audience, it felt so different, and I loved it. It's like, yes, can we just always do this?
Because like, you know, maybe in seasons after this, it won't be like that. But now I feel like I've had the experience. I like got on the course with production and then with my sidelines and felt comfortable. And so if we just add in like different variables to that, I feel like I'll be okay. But all at once would be a little overwhelming. And I think it would have been fine, but just it was much more comfortable this way. And so I was really happy that's how it went.
Yeah, so season 14 will have like 5 people in the audience. Season 15, let's have like 25. I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. If it all went back, like, we'd deal with it and it'd be fun. And then we'd probably be like, wow, there's people, have fun. Like, I'm sure we'd just adapt immediately. Yeah. So did you and your brother like apply together? Were you hoping to have a story that they would feature together and all that?
Yeah, so you know, they asked me to apply, and so you're kind of always looking for a story that the producers will want to tell. If you're just kind of a bland person, they're like, well, like, we'll show you because you're a good athlete, but like, what's your story really?
Right.
And so from the beginning, like, I think I realized after I got the call for season 12, and then like didn't compete, but after I got that call, I realized, looking at all the other teenagers, I was the only one that could possibly compete with a sibling. And I was like, whoa, like, this is super cool. Like, this is something that, you know, only I have. And I mean, Caitlin and Caleb Bergstrom are siblings, and their brother Danny competed as well. So, you know, we're not the first brother-sister duo, but the first like teen adult sibling duo, I guess.
Yeah.
And so realizing that, you know, we really did like kind of not like push that to the producers, but we did like kind of make that a focus of our story. And so his other story is kind of like, he's an artist, and so he has a website, and like he'll sell like his like clothing designs. And so he actually was like part of, I don't know if you can see my shirt, like designing this.
Oh, really? Okay. I wondered where you got that from because I remember seeing you on set and was like, oh, that's different. Like, where is this
So
from?
there's like a whole story behind this outfit.
Okay, yeah, tell
So
us.
like all of the doodle designs, and you can like see like it's on the stripe too. So all of this is his design. And then so he designed this like big doodle piece, and his shorts kind of like matched my top, which was really cool. But so we hired in the woman who does Jesse Graff's outfits, because so I wanted this outfit to to look like a Formula One car. So I'm a huge fan of racing.
Nice.
And so the
Nice.
Mercedes car from this year was like really, really cool. And I was like, whoa, like what if I didn't have any ideas for my outfit? And I was like, what if my outfit like looked like that car? And so kind of just the color scheme, the stripes, that was, you know, supposed to replicate that. And then the woman who we had making it was like, okay, do we want like some like texture on it? And my mom was like, we could do like gears or something for the car. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, like that doesn't feel quite right. And then we were like, oh, what if we did Isaiah's doodles? And so we put that in, we like added it in, and I like loved how it turned out. I was so happy because, you know, the way like my outfit worked, and then when I stood next to Isaiah, like it was kind of like mirrored because my top would match his shorts, and then it was super cool how it all fit together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. What is Isaiah's website? Because we can link to it in the episode.
It's luckystripedesigns.com.
Okay, awesome. Totally gonna check that out. I love that you shared that because I love like unique stuff like that in general, and I love like art just for fun. Like I draw and I paint and I have a lot of art around my house, but like I love seeing how people can intertwine it into their lives in some way, and so it's really cool. Nice. So, are there other ways that you and Isaiah like motivate each other? I know that you train together, and I know that I'm sure you're giving each other like strategic advice, but have there been times when one of you is like getting down on yourself or like feeling disillusioned or whatever, and you're able to help each other work it through?
Like we'll all have bad training days or like bad training weeks, or sometimes it'll stretch out. And I think just like having someone to remind you what you've done in the past, because so quickly you can lose sight of like your big achievements. Because I don't know, I always feel like your biggest losses stay with you more than your biggest wins, and maybe that's just my mindset. Which I should fix, but that's just kind of how it feels. Like you're devastated, you don't get something, and then when you finally do, it's like, whew, like I got it. Like I was working on the quad salmon ladder skip for like a day, and we had Sam and Phil in town, Folsom, and they were helping me so much. It was great, and I was just working on it, and I just couldn't get it. And I would get one side, and then I'd fail, and then I'd get the other side, and then fail some more. I was like, oh, like I didn't really care about it that much until that point when I got like really close, and I was like, oh, like now I really do want to get this. And so I worked on it all of that day, and then went home and like had like a couple rips on my hand. And I was like, I'm probably not going to get it before we leave for the show, because this was like right before. And then the next day we go back to the gym Rise we were trying it at, and I was like, okay, like get it. And so I finally got it. But I was really excited. I was like, wow, like that was so cool. But then the rest of the day, like that just faded out more than the day before had like the loss had stayed with me. And the fact that I hadn't made it stayed with me.
Yeah.
And so going back, sorry, that was a tangent to get back to the point of, you know, having someone to remind you like, okay, hey, you know, you maybe lost this competition today, or maybe couldn't get this challenge in training, but you know, you have done this in the past, and this is the kind of athlete you are, and this is the kind of person you are. And my family, we're all Christians, so we have a strong belief of like your performance doesn't define you, and your athletic career doesn't define you. And so to have someone like constantly reminding you that, like, yes, this is important. Yes, this is what we work for. And we want to put in all of the work so that God can glorify himself through us. We want to give him all of the chances he needs to do that. But at the end of the day, like if he wants to speak through our loss, that's also something that we need to be okay with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally hear you. I think it's natural in a way for a lot of people to remember what was hard or what didn't go well more than the victory. And I think it's just human nature. I think so many people listening can relate to what you're saying, because that just seems to be the way it always goes. And I remember in high school. I don't know if this is a true fact. I would have to look, like, do some research, but I remember in high school, one of my teachers explaining that, um, like in your psychology, like in your mind and how your brain works, oftentimes you have to hear 7 positive, like, good things about yourself to kind of like help to negate just one negative comment. And so if you kind of look at it from that concept, it's like we need 7 times more to focus on the good things that are happening, to realize the victories that are happening and like let them set into our brain, to just negate one time that we really screwed up. Like, and I think that in Ninja, we feel that. I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying. But when we look at it as you're describing, it's like we're building our character every time that we fail, every time that we're really struggling through something. It's building that character of perseverance, of having the tenacity to keep going when it clearly it's not always easy, and just being willing to keep going on because, I'm sure, people talk about this a lot in their gyms, but Ninja has so many great life lessons, and if you have like the willingness to keep persevering even when you're failing, it's hard. Maybe you feel really lame because everyone else is getting something that you haven't gotten yet. If you can take that same like humbleness and willingness to keep trying and apply that to other areas of your life, that is completely life changing. Just being willing to say like, I didn't get hired for this job, or I didn't get accepted into this college, and blah, blah, blah. Like all these other things that probably will happen at some point in life. Just being willing to like take a look at your character and take a look at, what's happening and be willing to keep moving forward. Like it's just such a big deal. And I want to especially emphasize that to like teens and younger people listening, because we do get so caught up in the failures, but the failures can be this foundation to help you spring forward in such like an amazing way. And that's a lesson that I've learned, and I can tell that it's something like
I was
in your
talking
mind
to
as well.
someone about, I don't remember if it was about like a different season or whatever, but I was bummed about my performance, and it wasn't a terrible performance, but I wanted more out of it, so it was disappointing, I guess. And I was talking to Jessie LeBrecq, and she was like, hey, at the end of the season, everyone is going to be disappointed at some point. Like, we've had, let's just take the Ninja Warrior season, for example. Like, we've had 2 winners, and then Daniel as the guaranteed winner. So that's a little bit different, but 2 winners, like, or, we'll say 3. And how many people compete a year? Like, everyone ends up disappointed. It's like everyone is going to fail at some point, and it's all like, it just takes a little while for us all, like, maybe if you make it to semifinals or if you make it to Vegas, like, your disappointment is kind of postponed for a little bit, but at some point we're all like, we can't all win. We can't all climb the 80-foot the fastest. There's one person, or sometimes not even one person, and so everyone is going to walk away disappointed at some point, which is kind of crazy. Like, I feel like other sports aren't as much like that, but yeah, it really teaches us to deal with that disappointment and how to apply that and how to move on, but focus on it enough to make changes in our training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And like you touched on before, that it's, if your complete identity and like your main focus is I am a ninja and I am a ninja athlete, you're going to run yourself into a wall at some point, just because you might be the best ninja out there right now, but a few years from now, maybe you're not. And then are you going to feel worse about yourself? And I say that maybe sounding harshly, but I've seen it happening, and like not you specifically. I mean, in concept. Sorry, I wasn't trying to like pinpoint you. I meant in general, people who are listening. You might feel like you are like, the top ninja right now, winning everything, or maybe you are, and then you get hurt, and then what happens? Do you feel worthless because you're not doing ninja right now? Like, yes, you might struggle with those emotions, but again, like the grounding of who we are, like our foundation as people, cannot be a ninja. And again, I think that's can be a little like earth shattering for some people to hear when we like put all of our focus on trying to get on a TV show or trying to be the best in the league or whatever it is. But I teach a workshop on failure, dealing with failure and disappointments. in our sport. And it's one thing I really emphasize is like you have to find your self-worth just in who you are as a person and not in what we are as ninjas. So,
There's this one quote that I heard recently, and I'm gonna mess it up. I can't even remember who said it, but it was faith is accepting that we are accepted. Um, the former will produce creative peace, but the latter like will possibly give some driven results, but will always be like rooted in angst. Um, and so that I kind of was like, oh wow, like it can seem like when we're living for acceptance, we could get some driven results. Like yes, that can be a byproduct, but at the same time, like it's always going to be rooted in that insecurity and that like I have to prove myself over and over, and that's just not a fun way to live. Versus, but kind of living by acceptance, we get to like continue to live into God's plan for us, or like the path that we want to live in our lives. Um, and so that kind of stuck with me. I was like, okay, like both ways can give like results, but it's kind of how we feel like behind those results that kind of determines like where we're at.
Yeah, it makes sense. No, well said. I think exactly what you said. It's like as time goes on, there you can run into that experience of like just feeling exhausted trying to prove yourself, or if some other challenge comes into life, or just like you deal with a loss of a family member, like some other like major stressor in life, it can really eat into your performance on the course. And then it's like again the same thing. If all of your self-worth or just purpose as a person is in like being a great ninja warrior, and then you don't have that anymore, like it can be devastating. So yeah, we got into some heavy stuff right here. This is great. I wasn't expecting this. I do want to I'm just taking a look at our time here, looking at the outline. I do want to ask, in the qualifying episode, just talking a little bit more specifically about your experience on the course. Talk to us about how you felt moving through the obstacles, where you fell, how did it feel, and were you going for your strategy and it just didn't work out, or like what was happening there on the course? And you can recap for us.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll just kind of start like at the very, very beginning of the course. So I was really, I train really hard. I think most of the athletes on the show do. And so I knew if I kind of performed to my potential, I could probably move on to semifinals. I just didn't want to have like a little slip up, which happens all too often in ninja. So I was really nervous about being nervous. I didn't want to let nerves take over. And so, the whole, like, as soon as we got to Tacoma and, leading up to it in interviews and everything, I was just like, okay, be yourself. Like, don't be super nervous. And so I kept praying for peace, that God would just give me peace beyond understanding. And so, each step we got closer to competing, I was like, okay, like, I'm going to get nervous now. Like, this is the time I typically get nervous. I was like, okay, well, I'm not nervous yet. Like, I'll be nervous in like a couple hours. And then it just kept getting pushed off. And so I like wasn't nervous, and it was crazy. And I walk up to the start line, and here's a little funny backstory. But I'm walking up to the start line, and they're about to like count you down to go up on the stairs to go out to the platform. And I was like, okay, like I'm not super nervous yet. Like, I guess I'll just keep praying. Like whatever I've been doing, God's been making it work. So I just kept praying for peace, and I like had my head down and like my eyes closed, and I just started praying like out loud. I was like, God, please give me peace. No matter what happens, help me to glorify you. That's just kind of been my prayer throughout this whole season. And so I'm praying, my eyes are closed, and then I look up and I look over, and the guy who's going to count me down, like production, just kind of looks at me because I was definitely talking to myself, and he just kind of looks at me, and I gave him this thumbs up, and he gave me a thumbs up. And he's like, you're good to go. So I like walk up the stairs. And that was like the last thing that happened before I like got on the course. So I'm up there, and I was like, okay, like I still feel at peace. Like, and I look over and I see like all of my family and friends. And so I had Jody and Barclay and Daniel and Isaiah and my mom. And so seeing them there, I was like, okay, like it's okay. Like they're there for me. And if I fall early, like they'll still be there for me. And if I clear the course, they'll be there for me. And that was a really reassuring moment. And so, like, standing there looking at the first obstacle, you're like, okay, I've like practiced stuff like this. I'm not gonna fall in the water. But what if I fall in the water? And so just that wave of like, okay, this is real. This is happening. Like, don't mess it up. They give me the countdown and I start going. And so I cleared the first obstacle, obviously, and felt good. And just kind of like as I was moving through the course, all of the obstacles felt how I imagined they would feel, which was really cool because, you know, with visualization, you can either get it really right and it feels good, or you can be really wrong and it doesn't feel how you thought it would feel and you're kind of thrown off. And having not been on, you know, Ninja Warrior obstacles since junior, and junior was like smaller, I was kind of nervous to see like how my visualization was going to translate over, but everything felt kind of normal. And like on the course, I just kept hearing my sidelines voices. So Isaiah would be telling me to do something, or I just kept hearing Barclay say like, she's like, you got this. She just kept saying, babe, you got this, babe. And like hearing her voice and knowing her, like I knew she really meant that. And I was like, okay, Barclay believes in me. She's done this before. Like I can do this. And Daniel was like telling me like, okay, rest now, or like as soon as you start going, like be efficient, like be powerful, make moves. And then on tipping point, the obstacle with like the honeycomb type thing, I got to the top and I was like starting to tip it, and I like tipped it to like here-ish and was like, okay, now I'm gonna get it till it goes flat. And I got to here and Jody was like, stop it there. And I was like, stop it here, like it's not flat yet. What do you mean? And then I was like, okay, like I trained with Jody a lot, and so I was like, I'll trust it. And so I just started moving down, and I got to the very end, and then I looked behind me and I was like, I am completely level with it. If I had gone till it was flat, I would have had to do that big downward motion, and that would not have been as comfortable or as effective. And I was like, thanks, Jody. Like, good advice. I hadn't noticed that. I thought when it was flat, it would be even. But it wasn't. So I like reached over and I was like, yes, like awesome. And so I start going and I cleared that one. And then, so ironically, the one time I messed up an obstacle was when I didn't fully listen. So Daniel was like, take all of your rest. And I was like, okay. And I stand there, I start like shaking out, and I'm like looking at all my people, looking at my virtual sidelines. And I think I took like 15 to 20 seconds rest maybe. And then I was like, okay, I feel like I should go now. And so I started going, and looking back on it, like I should have waited until Sheldon, the challenge producer, like said, gotta go. I should have taken all of that rest like Daniel had said. But I really thought I was like almost at that point. Looking back, it was not as much rest as I had. So I start going, and I get all the way up the ring thingy that like locks in place. I forgot what that part of it's called. And I transfer over to the top piece, and I just remember like looking and being like, whew, like I'm a little pumped now. Like I am definitely not as fresh as I was at the beginning of this course. And so I hop onto the first one, and I hadn't fully decided if I wanted to go back and forth or do that big dropping down skip move. And I just remember thinking like, okay, I'm pretty pumped right now. I could possibly make this one big move down. I don't know if I could make all the side to side moves and all of those swings. So I decided to go for that big drop move. Didn't quite pay out. The pills were like very slippery. And so my hands sweat a lot when I compete, and you know, no chalk on the show. So that was an extra challenge. But you know, I kind of like, I fell and I came out of the water and I was like, hey, it's okay. Like I made it to the obstacle before the wall. Like that's pretty far. And like my rookie season, like I'm pretty happy with that. Like obviously I wanted the buzzer, because we all do. We all want it really badly and we all train for that. But to know like, okay, first time around, I was able to go out there and like not mess anything up like big time. So that was cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. I thought you did an amazing job, and I could tell like some athletes who were doing like that drop down into the pill instead of going across. I was like, they could totally do this, but just like the circumstance of you're already getting pumped. It did seem pretty far, not just under you, but like under and forward. And that to me was what I was wondering. Like, I wonder if watching from the sideline, they're really picking up on how far it seems. Like when you actually did the move and fell, Did you feel like you skimmed it, or you felt like you were there, or were you like, oh, that was bigger than I thought?
So my hands were definitely on top of it. I don't
Okay.
think my body was in a great position for it because so the first V is here, and then there's like this long panel, and then the second V is here. So it's a
Right.
big drop down, but like you said, it's forward, and then there's this big bar like in the way. So
Yeah.
you can't really throw like super far forward or your head's gonna hit it. So I kind of tried to keep my chest back and then reach out in front of me. Um, and then that just I was not in a very like loaded position and ready to absorb it. And at that point, my hands were just like, whoop, just like slid straight
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. Well, you'd had an excellent run, and like you said, for your rookie season, like that's amazing. Like you'd had a great run, and did you end up coming in the first place spot for women then in your episode?
Yeah, so I was first place for women, which was very cool. I kind of was like, I didn't even know until so since we were here's another behind the scenes look. Since we're the teenagers, we have a limited amount of onset hours, and we had like tutoring that morning because to be allowed to have us there, we like had to do school hours. So my school started at 8 a.m. that morning, and we did film during the day, but I did a couple hours of school and then went in to do like hair and makeup with my mom, and then went to set. And so technically my like onset hours started at 8 a.m. when I had that first like
Oh.
tutoring session.
Okay.
Um, I had a point with that. What was my point? Oh, and so they had to make us leave early. So right after I ran, I like literally ran, went and changed because I was wet, and then got on the bus to be shipped back to the hotel.
Wow.
So it was very go go go. And we get back to
Yeah.
the hotel, and everybody's just hanging out. It's a good time. And there were still a lot of other women to run that night or that afternoon, I guess. It ran into the evening. And so I didn't know. I was happy with my performance, and so I kind of was like, I'm pretty sure I'm moving on. It is what it is, right? And then Isaiah stayed the rest of the evening because he's not a minor anymore. And so he comes back and he was like, you were the first place female. And I was like,
Woo.
no, what? Like, I was so surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I was freaking out. And so we both moved on to semifinals. And so, yeah, it was crazy that I finished that way.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. So cool. Love it. So now for those of the listeners who are like following the ANW season, so we're still in the qualifying episodes, but at this point where we are like chronologically, how were you feeling then? Like once like the excitement of moving on to semifinals, like once it kind of died down and you could like think a little bit more, like we only really had like what 2-ish weeks between qualifying and semifinals. So what did you do during that time? Like, did you have heavy training sessions, or like was it more just like mental preparation? Like, what did you do between that time?
Yeah, so like you said, it's like 3 weeks, like not much. So we got home, and I knew a big flaw in my performance was actually how I warmed up.
Okay.
And so I went out there. We had a little warm up area, and then it was like the set. And so I went out to the set and like the course, and was on a bunch of sidelines for people, which I love doing. I love getting to be part of that. I love getting to support people. And then so in between those sidelines, I would like start doing like some push-ups and like trying to get like a nice like pre-pump. But I didn't have access to like the warm-up bar anymore. And so I couldn't do any pull-ups, which I always do like a nice flash pump on the bar before I compete or like run a course.
Right.
And so I didn't really, that didn't get in my head, which was nice. But I do remember like as soon as I finished that fourth obstacle, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm starting to get pumped. Like I did not warm up properly. So after going home, I tried to find ways that I could warm up and get a forearm pump specifically without a bar because I didn't know like what set would be like and if I'd have access to the bar the whole time. Like I didn't in Tacoma. So one of my coaches had this like little climbing tool, and so it's like this little like circular thing with a little strap on it, and I'll like hook it around my toes and like hold on to the little cliffhanger part and do these like little pull ins, and it'll like pump out my forearms. And so I found different ways to get a specific forearm pump without having to use a bar, which made me feel like so much more comfortable going into semifinals. But you're saying about like training in general. I definitely had some hard sessions, like conditioning sessions before I went back. I didn't want to like rip or anything or get, oh, actually, the day I got back, or I got back, and then the day after I went to train because we're always training. And I've had an ankle injury for about a year and a half now. So I injured it at the UNX major, the second major. Tore some ligaments. It's pretty rough. And then kind of the ligaments healed, and then new problems started to develop. And so I don't have full range of motion in my left ankle. And so that makes running and jumping really hard. And especially like if I do something and land on my toes, that's really hard for me. And so the day I got back, we were doing this like little speed course. And I did this like Kong precision move, kind of parkour. I don't really love parkour, but I landed on it. I landed too much on my toes, and so my heels dropped down. And my left ankle just like freaked out. It was like, this does not feel good. Like, what are we doing? And so that whole time, like in between qualifying and semis, I was like still training hard upper body, but trying to recover my ankle enough to be able to do semis. And so I think 2 days before we left was when I tried the wall again. And so I tried the wall before qualifying, and then we got back, and so I injured my ankle, and then I didn't do any of the wall. And then like 2 days before, I was like, okay, my legs are strong enough, but like, are my ankles, like, how does my technique on it feel?
Yeah.
So I finally tried it again and was like getting it pretty good. And so I was like, okay, like I feel confident. But it was just one of those things that was like in the back of my mind as I was competing and warming up for semifinals. Like, you know, you have this injury and it could flare up really bad again, or it could stay kind of mellow. So that was a wild ride in that 2 weeks, like recovering that and trying to make it competable was scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's real life. And, you know, I think probably a lot of people have been in that situation where they're like nursing some sort of ankle tear or sprain or whatever. And it can be so daunting because you're like, well, the first obstacle, I have to use my feet, and hopefully it's not too bad. But so yeah, everyone will have to watch and see how you ended up doing in semifinals. Yeah, because, you know, there's every episode had crazy balance in semifinals, and, you know, the agility balance run is definitely a sprint for most of the obstacles. We won't say like what was in your episode, but like basically every episode had something that was like, you better go and hope that you clear this. So
and it was scary because like,
we'll see.
You know, we all train agility, and I think agility is really fun. But I feel like there's always a higher margin for error in agility. So you want to do it as many times as you can and get comfortable on it. But at the same time, like you don't want to push it too far and make something like really sketchy where you might roll an ankle or like blow out a knee, or like even I had one friend who was doing agility and just landed wrong and hurt his shoulder because he like hit the ground hard. So I feel like the margin for error in agility is really high. So we all want to train it and be comfortable on it, but don't push it too far and do something too crazy. So trying to find that balance with agility is hard.
Yeah. And I also think there are a lot of ways to work on the type of like fast twitch muscle movements and things that are necessary for agility without always having to be on agility obstacles. Because like you said, it does really increase your chance for getting injured. And so I look a lot at like what do football players do with like their quick feet, like especially exercises that are training your ACL and like the taking those one-legged landings and like pushing like quick movements. I think those are all like really important to supplement your training for agility. And even just like box jumps, one-legged hops, like all these kinds of things that are going to help strengthen your legs and your like lower body muscles for those like quick movements and like strong pushes and strong strides and things like that. Even like uphill sprints can be helpful just for like warp wall too, and just anything that's like pushing, quick motion, like driving force. So yeah,
that's really smart. Because a lot of, I think it's more maybe with the younger generation of ninjas, myself included, like it's really tempting to just do obstacles because it feels like it's going to translate the best.
Yeah.
But then there is higher risk of injury, higher margin for error. And so to supplement it with like strength and conditioning work, or like you said, like training those fast twitch muscles so that when you're on balance, you know, you feel comfortable and you feel like you can react really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And again, with balance and agility like that, some of it is like that coordination of like hitting the correct mark on every single piece of equipment. And so that is something that you do need to be on the obstacles or setting up. Sometimes like when I'm doing progressions into stuff and I'm coaching, like I'll set like spots on the ground and I'll just tell kids or whoever, adults, whoever it is, to like sprint through it, and it's a flat surface and it's like safe because it's on carpet bonded foam or whatever. But I'll say like your foot has to hit this mark, and so we're going to keep moving, inching around these little marks on the ground, and you have to hit that exactly. And it's working the same concept of like accuracy, but obviously nothing's moving, so it's more of like a basic progression. But I think there are other ways, if people, even if you can't get to the gym, right, and you're feeling like FOMO of, oh no, like I'm not working on obstacles. There's other ways that you can do stuff like that, just at home, in the yard, in the street. So yeah, so I want to move on to our last question of the regular episode, and then we're going to move into some bonus content. As you listeners know, Ninjababes is funded through Patreon and through people's donations, and so we appreciate your support. Every single episode has bonus content. You can get like discounts on products. You can get like insider information on what's happening next in Ninjababes, and like voting power within Ninjababes, and like picking new merchandise, all these things within the Patreon community. So check it out at www.patreon.com/ninjababes. All right, so the last question I have is actually from someone on Instagram on the Ninjababes page who is a teen. She's 16. She sent me a question. What advice do you have for those teens who are in the in-between phase, like the ninja purgatory of you're too old for junior, but you're too young for the regular like casting of ANW, the adult show? And so like, what advice do you have for them? But also there's these feelings of like, you were chosen, right? There's teens who are chosen, but it wasn't like open to everyone to apply. And so what advice might you have to other girls even who are just struggling with like, oh, well, I wasn't picked and I'm in this weird age group where I can't really apply either.
Right. Yeah, I've been there. And I thought the period was going to be a lot longer for me than it ended up being. But I guess the thing that helped me get through it the best was kind of leaning into the other leagues and the other big competitions. So NNL and UNAA and UNX was around. It's not anymore. But, you know, those leagues were really great in helping me keep training and keep pushing and having those like yearly goals outside of the show. And so focusing in on those and training really hard for that helped me not only prepare for the show, but also like stay kind of not like content, but like stay in the sport before I was old enough for the show. And so, I mean, every year a lot of people apply and a lot of people don't get calls, and that's always so devastating because like half of the ninja community, or less than half, is really excited to get their chance. And then I guess most of the community is really devastated that they didn't get a call. And this year, especially with the teens, was really weird because, you know, they emailed like just the same 20 kids from the season 12 when they did want us on. They emailed us and a couple more and asked us to apply. And so we kind of thought that it was limited to that. And then more other kids started to apply, and then the calls started going out and more people started getting calls. And so we weren't expecting that. And I think it's really hard for some people that, you know, heard, you know, you're not supposed to apply and then didn't. And then some people, you know, just said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and apply, and then got a call. So it can be really hard to, you know, feel like you did the right thing, but at the same time you missed a year, I guess. But I guess like the biggest thing I can say is, you know, there's always next year, and like it's devastating. But you know, they're going to call more people next year, and it's your chance to get stronger. And for me, like I missed season 12 because of COVID, but I still was dealing really heavily with that ankle injury, and it was much better to compete this year than last year. And I don't know what would have happened if I had competed last year. But, you know, for me, like, I always know God has a plan for it, and he's orchestrating it in a way that is best for his kingdom and best for the work that we need to be doing. But, you know, none of that takes away from how hard it is to not get a call.
Yeah.
Or like be in that in-between phase where you don't get to do either show. So those are really tough times, and I just want people to know, like, I hear you and I see you, and like that is hard. And if you need someone to talk to, like, me or Cara are here for you, and like we'll just be here to be sad with you, because that's a really hard time, and you know, no amount of like motivational quotes are gonna make that easier. So
yeah, it's very true. And I always also like to remind people that it's a TV show. Like, they're still like doing a casting process that's partially athletic ability and partially like your personality, and do they think that they can market you well on the TV show? Like, and that can be like it can feel unfair, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. And so there are some years where you're like, wow, so and so applied so many times and they've still never got on, or like they were on and now they haven't been called back. Like, what happened? And it's not totally fair. It's a reality TV show, and I think sometimes just like looking at like the reality of that can help people be like, okay, well, it's not like my fault. Like, I wasn't good enough. Like you said, there's these other leagues that you can prove your athletic ability in a more like fair fashion than just applying where someone has to choose you. So.
Yeah, I mean, some of the strongest people I know haven't, like, or maybe they've gotten a call in the past and haven't gotten a call now, or they've never gotten a call. And so those are always so sad, because you know, like, if they had their shot, they would make the most of it and they would prove it. But it is a TV show, and, you know, they're not always looking solely at athletic ability, and that can be disappointing.
Yeah. We're going to move on to the bonus portion of our episode. So right now we're going to say goodbye to our regular listeners. So thanks for coming on, Isabella.
Be strong, be you, be a ninja babe.